Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, Mysterious Voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, so I wanted to talk about another exciting poetry, one picked out by my friend Bevan because it is Bevan Week, yay! And she has picked an interesting poet and poem. Today's poem is all about the art of losing. I am referring to One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. I've actually talked about Elizabeth Bishop on this channel before when I cataloged her poem Armadillo, which I believe I did for my LGBTQ highlight sort of thing that I did between June and or May and August, a very long period of time. Pretty interesting poet. But for those who don't know, I don't need to go into that great a detail. She was an American poet who lived in the 1900s. She was known for writing pretty internalized psychological type poetry. Although she kind of distanced herself from the women's movement of the 1900s and the LGBT movement. Those are still aspects of her poetry. And it's significant that she is a lesbian, a pretty out lesbian. She didn't really try to hide it or anything like that. And she wrote a couple of books, poems, and won awards for her work and was nominated as well. Pretty interesting poet all around. But without further ado, let's get Bevan Week continuing here as we talk about One Art. I will read it, do a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. One Art. The art of losing isn't hard to master. So many things seem filled with the intent to be lost that their loss is no disaster. Lose something every day, except the fluster of lost door keys, the hour badly spent. The art of losing isn't hard to master. Then practice losing farther, losing faster. Places and names and where it was you meant to travel, none of these will bring disaster. I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went. The art of losing isn't hard to master. I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster, some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. Even losing you, the joking voice, a gesture I love, I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing's not too hard to master, though it may look like, write it, like disaster. And so that was One Art by Elizabeth Bishop. In terms of analysis, there is a fair bit to talk about with this poem. I should note that I read a book, it was a Bevan recommended book, which is interesting. I read it last year, and it had sections of Elizabeth Bishop's One Art scattered throughout, as that was very much in theme with the overall book. So I think it's interesting that I keep coming across it. And it's a very fascinating poem. In terms of narrative, there isn't really a narrative. It's more of a thought experiment, a mental health kind of experiment, where the narrator encourages you to think about losing things. How a lot of things seem determined to be lost, so it's not a big deal if they get lost. First, starting with small things like your keys, or just losing an hour, just not spending it well, and then losing lots of things like your houses or the places you want to go to, or like a continent or a river, and just ending by saying it's not a big deal if you lose things, which is very wise mentally health speaking, because a lot of people might think that, they get anxious. It's a bad thing if you lose stuff, but it's sometimes small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. So it's not that bad. It's not a disaster. I do like how she ramps up the poem as she goes on, almost getting to a point of hyperbole, as she says, I lost 2 cities, lovely ones, and vaster some realms I owned, 2 rivers, a continent. I miss them, but it wasn't a disaster. And one has to wonder, like, how do you lose rivers? How do you lose continents? She's exaggerating to the point of, again, hyperbole, to illustrate how you're supposed to be okay with losing things. Like it's no big deal. That continent will be fine. That even though you lost it, it's surely not your responsibility to keep track of everything. And even if you do lose something like as small as your keys, like you'll probably find them. Like later. And I also like how in this poem, Elizabeth, or the narrator, who I'm guessing is Elizabeth, is very loving towards the reader. She's like, the art of losing isn't hard to master, kind of making it okay for us to lose things. She's like, I lost my mother's watch, and look, my last or next to last of 3 loved houses went, supposedly talking about things that you enjoy. But the last verse is particularly interesting because she says, even losing you, and in parentheses, the joking voice, a gesture I love. I shan't have lied. It's evident the art of losing isn't too hard to master, though it may look like, in parentheses, write it like disaster. Like leaving little notes for the reader in the poem as a sign of affection, as a sign that things are going to be okay. And then I think this is maybe less to do with the poem, or maybe it's all to do with the poem, but like the mantra, the repeating mantra, the art of losing isn't hard to master, saying things over and over, reminding ourselves, a mental health experiment. It's kind of stuck in my head because of that as a result. But the nature of the rhyme is really fascinating because it goes A, B, A, and then other verses, it's like ABA as well. But she rhymes master with disaster, fluster with master, faster with disaster, my last or with master, faster with disaster, gesture with disaster. Kind of playing fast and loose with the rules, but it makes the poem flow very smooth and enjoyable to say. And I think that's why this poem kind of sticks out to me. Much more so than maybe other poems, but I really admire the message and the style of how she's writing it here. Anyway, those are my thoughts on One Art by Elizabeth Bishop, which I did because I love this poem. It is Poetry Thursday, and also it is Bevan Week. If you have any thoughts about this poem, let me know in the comments below. I will put a link to it in the description, as it is very important to read, probably one of the poems that I urge you to read the most, not only because it is a good poem, but also, well, at least in my opinion, but it's also good for mental health wise. And I think Bevan even used it for a mental health related group thing she was doing, which is cool. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem or this poet if they do not already know. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird travels. Enjoy the rest of Bevan Week.